My name is Mike Myers. I'm a member of A Beta of Illinois, the MRF, A Beta of Wisconsin, A Beta of Minnesota. And I was state coordinator for A Beta of Illinois for the past 4 years. This is my first year off. And with 10,000 members, you have a lot to do and a lot to answer for. And one of the things that really came out was this Ride Smart program in a biker's perspective. And it was done in cooperation with the Illinois Department of Transportation, Division of Traffic Safety. And what it was back in May of 2012, it was a great year for riding, but unfortunately a lot of our brothers and sisters weren't making it through that half of the year, that portion of the year. By mid-May, the fatality rate was higher than we've ever seen in our history. And so Illinois Department of Transportation understood that A Beta of Illinois, along with a couple other organizations, really were caring about their membership and a safe environment to ride in. And so they gave us a call and said, hey, let's sit down and talk about what's going on and what we can do to fix it. And it's like, okay, let's do that. Well, they wanted to do a conference call. I'm an old guy. I do the things the old way, face to face. I said, where are you going to have this? And they said, it's Springfield, Illinois. That's the capital. And so we went over there. We showed up, myself and two of my board members showed up. And we had a long discussion on the phone. And then we had about a 2-hour discussion after the phone call. And based on that discussion, I kept asking them, well, how are we going to figure out what really happened? And this morning, a lot of discussion was about, well, how do we get this data and how do we put it together from a biker's perspective? And IDOT was saying, hey, we've tried to put the information out there for years, but they don't listen to us. They listen to bikers. And so I said, well, I just retired. How about if I come in and work in your facility with the guy or the person that's going to put the data together, and let's work together. From a biker's perspective, I can look at it in a different way than somebody who doesn't ride. Because I look at it from my experiences in riding. I've been riding motorcycles I started in 1969 with a 305 Scrambler. And so I've ridden on and off through the years. I probably got 250,000 miles easily. I got more miles backing into a curb than some people have going down the highway, but it's one of those things. But in this discussion, they said, well, let's see what we can do, because I'm not an employee. So they came back in August of 2012 and said, yes, you can come into our facility. Had to make a lot of promises that this data would not, I can't say names, I can't say locations, but they're all up here. And some of the things and they said, well, why do you want to do this? Because I want to save my brothers and sisters out there. It's all about that. So it's Ride Smart is a choice. It's your choice. I'm not going to be talking about what you have to do or what you should do. I'm going to be talking about choices that were made in this study. And this study was based on fatalities in 2011, 2012, and 2013 in Illinois. And so we all make choices in life. Why not take time and think about the smart riding choices you want to make? Check your bike before each ride. Isn't it important to check your motorcycle? We hear about it all the time. In Illinois, we have a trifold that we hand out and give out as often as we possibly can. We have it on our website, and it's called the T-Clock. I know many of you have probably heard about the T-Clock, and I've suggested to people, laminate it, put it in your garage on a clipboard with a grease pencil, and every time you go out, mark off and check your motorcycle before you go. And you say, well, why is this important? As I get on in this discussion, you will find out why it was important. Drink alcohol and ride. Is that a good choice? Something to think about. Drugs and ride. Even prescription drugs. You really need to know the effects they have on you and your coordination. Evaluate your medical condition to the ride. Are you always feeling good? Are you a little dizzy? Is it a good choice to ride that day? It's your choice. Be aware on your ride. Should you really be aware on your ride? Be aware of your surroundings. Keep scanning. We'll be talking about that. Assume you're seen. I always assume I'm not seen. I'm invisible, that nobody sees me, and I go along that way. And we'll talk about some of the effects of that. Type of traffic. I recently just moved to Arizona, just outside of Phoenix, on the east side of Phoenix, so I don't have to do all of Phoenix every day. And but I came out through El Paso and Austin, and I'm going to tell you, guess what? I hit them both at rush hour. I'm just a lucky guy. So it's type of traffic. It's type of traffic. If you can avoid it, is that a good choice? But if you can't avoid it, some things you can do, we'll talk about that. Proper braking. I can't stress it enough. I looked at every piece of paper in these crashes, and I'm going to tell you, proper braking was one of the highlights of what was going wrong on the biker standpoint, what was not happening properly, and I'll get into more detail on that. And in Illinois, we call it the Cycle Rider Training Course. Every state has some sort of course, for motorcycle riders. I guess it's mandatory in Texas now. It is not mandatory in Illinois, but it is something that I highly suggest, and I'll get into more detail of why in the presentation. Okay, this crash study was done based, again, like 2011, 2012, and 2013. I just finished last Saturday night at midnight rolling the 2013 data into this, because the first year I did it, I had 2011, and one of my brothers came up to me, he goes, he said, that's only 1 year. I go, I know. I'm going to do it until you finally understand that what we really need to do and the choices we need to make. So I boiled everything down. When I worked for a living, I was a troubleshooter, and I broke everything down to root causes. You got a problem. You break down the root causes, what could cause that problem. What I'm trying to do is talk about, let's not have a crash. I don't want to have a safer crash. I don't want to have the crash in the first place, because they hurt and they kill. So why not have the crash? That's what I want to do. So that's what we're going to talk about. So with 2011, you can see, what's going on all the way down the list. 2012, very similar. 2013, very similar. There they all are together. Look at the top four. Who's responsible for 3 out of the top 4? Look in the mirror. Like Emery was saying, look in the mirror. We got to look in the mirror. We always look at the other guy and say, hey, that's what the problem is. When I first went into this, I thought for sure that the Cagers, they were the number one killer of us all the time, and we weren't the problem. They were. Well, I found out that we kind of are 3 out of the top 4, and sometimes even the top one, motorcyclist impaired. So I'm going to break them down. Right-of-way violation. I got all 3 years up here, broken down to 2011, 36 crashes, 37 fatalities, 34 operators, 3 passengers. When I say crashes, that's a crash. That means it has 36 operators. So you can see 2 of the operators survived. That means their passenger didn't. One of the things that I tell people, when you have a passenger on the back of that motorcycle, no matter how pissed you are, whatever it is, you're responsible for that passenger, and you need to get them home safe. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. So 2012, right-of-way violations, 54, 55, 49 operators, 5 passengers, 1 driver of the vehicle, other vehicle. 49 operators, that's substantial. But again, you've got six passengers that didn't make it home. 5, sorry. 2013, 45 crashes, resulted in 52 fatalities, 43 operator, 9 passenger. And you can see I got the M classifications, because they were talking about that earlier. Say, well, it was a right-of-way violation. How is that relevant? If you don't have proper training or a skills test ever, maybe there was something you could have done to not have that crash happen. And you're going to say, well, what was going on? Contributory causes. Left turn in path of motorcycle, U-turn in path of motorcycle, failed to reduce speed, rear end motorcycle, merge, side swipe, cross center line. That was throughout all 3 years. All 3 years I saw that. You know, and it was amazing, some of the reasons. I didn't see them. Or I saw a friend of mine going the other way, I made a U-turn and I didn't look. Or the sun was in my eyes. Well, if the sun's in your eyes, maybe the choice of the person driving that vehicle, maybe they should not make that turn until they can see properly. But they're in a hurry. So one of the things I need to qualify is on these crashes, I looked at every piece of paper. I was fortunate enough to look at every piece of paper in the crash, not only the forms that they fill out for the Department of Transportation in Illinois, but the coroner reports, the autopsies, the reconstruction of the crashes, and the witness reports, newspaper accounts. So I was able to go through everything, and like was said earlier today, not always is the officer report accurate. They have to do the best they can in a very short period of time. They don't have the time to really go in depth. So when you really get to see all the crash results and the studies that are done, I didn't realize how much math that is done to figure out the speeds and what was going on, but I do now. Okay, and then we talk about impaired vehicle drivers. And you can see 2011, 2012, 11 of the drivers of the other vehicle were impaired, whether it was drugs or alcohol. 2000, oh, typo here, I gotta fix that one. 2013, there was only 4. The number went down, but still, it's a bad number. Impaired vehicle driver. This crash happened in Wisconsin. There was 11 motorcyclists out of Michigan riding through Wisconsin. They had all the proper gear on and everything, but that didn't help them with this situation here. That car crossed the center line and impacted. There's 3 motorcycles right here. The only reason he didn't hit the other 2 motorcycles in that whole group was because those 3 motorcycles stopped that vehicle. And that is still in litigation, but look at the face of that first responder. Something he'll never forget. And hopefully we'll think about the choices. I'm going to skip that one because I get to it later. Right-of-way violation, ages. I've got all 3 years here. And you say, well, how is that relevant? Well, some of it is training, some of it is response. As we get older, one of the things to consider is when we get older, our reaction time is less. So how do we compensate for that? A rider training program, whatever it is in your area, a rider training program can compensate for your lesson reaction, but it trains you well enough that gives you the proper tools that you can do a better job in maintaining your safety and the safety of your passenger. And you can look at the age groups here, and 20 to 30, it's pretty high. And then again, it bounces up to 34, up and 51 and 60. And you'll see that number stay pretty high. Why is that? Returning riders. I heard that earlier today. Returning riders. Okay, they hadn't ridden a motorcycle in 20 years. The family was growing, but they went back out and bought a new motorcycle. Is it the same size that they rode when they rode before? Probably not. They wanted a big, nice cruiser, and they go out and get a nice cruiser. And some of them don't have the skill set at that point because they haven't been riding to really ride that motorcycle. What can help you with that? A rider training program. Time of day, day of week. I did all 3 years in here because, it was, you can see weekends, Sundays, and here. Again, it's right-of-way violation, but those are the times it really happens. But look at this time between 4 and 8 p.m. It's a pretty high number. It's a pretty high number. What's going on? People are coming home from work, not paying attention, and they're thinking about what they're going to do when they get home, what they're going to do for the evening, the meal, whatever, but they're not paying attention to what's going on. Motorcyclist impaired. I included the alcohol and drugs in here. I did break it down so I knew what it was, but basically it's drugs and alcohol, illegal drugs. And you can see it was number 1 for 2011, number 2 for 2012, number 2 for 2013. These are high numbers. 49 crashes resulted in 52 fatalities, 37 crashes, 37 fatalities, 37 crashes, 39 fatalities. But again, you know, and I've just showed, you know, there's other vehicles involved in some of them, but 31 vehicle, 27 one vehicle, 32 one vehicle, they talked about that earlier today too. One vehicle crashes, but they're all impaired. And no M classification, 11, 5. I got that number, I got to fix that number too. So it's bad, it's a bad thing. Again, you go contributing causes, unable to negotiate curves, hit fixed objects, riding in a group, rear-ended other motorcycles, ran through a gate, hit a train, lost control, ran off roadway. This is really a sad one. Failed to negotiate a curve in the rain at 120 miles an hour. I looked at the reconstruction on that. You couldn't even go 100 miles an hour and drive pavement. Not even the professional rider could do it. Why did they try it? Because they were impaired. Did they make a good choice that day? Apparently not. Hitting a train. They're big. As our locomotive engineer here, he can tell you that. You know, so these are some of the things they're not thinking about what's going on. Age groups. I'll consolidate it there. Really high here, but it still doesn't go down much until you get down here. So really, it's all over. You know, you can't say the kids are all doing it, and the returning riders are the ones that are all doing it. It's just, it kind of goes over the whole spectrum. Time of day, day of week. I had one in 2013. The gentleman was on his way to work, and his BAC was 0.104. He was on his way to work. It didn't. Yeah, I don't know if he was a bartender, but it wasn't a good thing. So and you can see they're even in the middle of the day during the week. You know, so you can't say bar time. I mean, bar time is prevalent. The weekends are prevalent, but even during the week, kind of shows up. Motorcyclist riding skills. I don't know how many of you have been out to the Black Hills, but this is Iron Mountain Road, one of my favorite places to ride, but it is one of the hardest roads to ride as a motorcyclist. Do you need skill? Yes, you do. Without skill, you're going to be part of the scenery. This is one of the rare places that it has guardrails. Most of the time, there's no guardrails, just tree lines, and sometimes you're looking at the top of the trees. So you need a good skill set to be there. Motorcyclist riding skills. Now these, nobody was impaired on these. And when I say that people were impaired, it's 0.08 and above. Yes, anything less than, you know, any level below that, you still are impaired to a point. You don't have all your skills available to you, but I went with the legal, you know, amount. But here, there's no impairment, and they're just going along, and they say, okay, you can see the results here. Contributing causes: failed negotiated curve, panic stop, lost control, rear braking only, cross center line, on ramp, lost control, failed to judge stopping distance. They were predominant through all 3 years, every crash that I had, and it was like, what's going on? Well, they didn't know how to negotiate the curve. They really weren't going that fast, but they weren't doing it properly. They panic stopped, lost control. Well, they weren't paying attention. They don't know their stopping distance on the motorcycle. They don't know how to judge their stopping distance. It's not a car. And if you don't have an M classification, you know, you have no skill set that's been tested. You know, so how do we know? And then rear braking only at minimum. Your front brake is 60% at minimum. 60% of your braking ability of that motorcycle. Now, if you don't use that front brake and you only use the rear brake, and I saw too many crashes that was with rear brake only, and they had a distance of 188 feet. If they used both brakes, they'd be here today. They might have fell over, but they would not have had the impact that they did. And my cousin, I was telling him about this, and he goes, I didn't realize that. I said, you knucklehead, what do you mean you didn't realize it? You got to use your front brake too. Well, I'll use it when it's an emergency. I said, no, you won't. You'll do what you normally do. Your reaction in an emergency situation is your normal reflexes. Your normal reflexes, if that's all you use is the rear brake, that's all you're going to use. Is that going to save your life? No. Practice. Always use that front brake. I wear out my front brake pads more than I do my back brake pads because it's just something I practice, and I believe in it. And I saw the results of it because when you see a rear brake only, they could have had less impact. And part of the training programs again is going to hit some of that. On ramps, I had many of them that they would just come onto an on ramp on the interstate, and they would just be going too fast, and they couldn't control it. And we lost one down in the Springfield area that was very well advertised, and he came on an on ramp with a brand new bike, and he was going too fast, and he took on two semis. You can imagine it didn't turn out well for him. Choices. Think about the choices you make. That's what this is about. Let's think about what we're doing, how we're doing it. In writing skills, how do you fix that? You take the courses. There's 3 levels of courses in Illinois. I don't know about in Texas, but there's 3 levels: the beginners, the advanced, and the there's intermediate. Take them, and then every couple of years, refresh yourself. Why not? Why not? It's your life, and it could be your passenger's life. Give yourself the best skill set you got, and you'll come home safer. Age groups, there they are all together. You can see right in the middle here, I was kind of surprised about that for the 3 years. And then back again, 51, 60, and I'm thinking it's still going back to, they just came back to riding. They got a big, Ultra or a big, Goldwing. It's a heavier bike. The dynamics are so much different than on a 305 Scrambler or a smaller bike that they might have ridden years ago. And then you go 2 up. That changes the dynamics a lot on the motorcycles. A lot of people don't understand that and don't practice that. And in Illinois, they're starting to do a program for the passengers, training the passenger, which I think is a good idea because the passenger needs to know what they need to do, what their responsibilities are. So that helps the driver of the motorcycle in an emergency or just going down the highway so they don't cause some issues. So that's one of the programs that they're putting together now. Yes?
Curious if folks in Illinois are aware that you can ride a passenger in the BRC2 or the ERC after the first exercise.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Under the MSF curriculum.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. And they've also gone into doing trikes. And I saw 1 trike in 2012. I've got 3 in 2013. And time of day of week. Again, this 4 to 6, 6 to 8, it's up there. And again, that's when people are going home. So now we'll go to motorcycle speed. I really thought this would be up really high. My perception, we all have perceptions when we go into something, I thought cagers are going to be number 1, speed's going to be number 2, construction sites are going to be number 3. Well, that didn't turn out that way. But speed, that was number 4 all 3 years. And, 16 crashes, 16 fatalities, 14 crashes, 14 fatalities. all operators. It wasn't until 2013 that we lost 2 passengers, and 6 of them were one vehicle, 5 one vehicle, 6 one vehicle. Again, no M classifications. That's still sticking out there. Sport bikes, 14, 2, 13, 1, 12, 2. So you can see sport bikes are really standing out there. Unfortunately, they feel the need to do that. Well, it's a choice they make. And how do we get their attention? I don't know. We've tried many things, to do it, but getting the awareness out there, doing programs such as this, lets them know that these are things that are going on. You say, what happened? Speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour, fail to negotiate curve at 100 miles an hour, riding on one wheel, passing on shoulder, passing at an intersection, weaving in and out of traffic. It's passing at an intersection. A gentleman was on a motorcycle and they were going fairly fast. 2 vehicles were stopped as a small bus was making a left-hand turn, crossing oncoming traffic, there was no traffic, so they were making a decent turn. Motorcyclist was going too fast, went into the oncoming lane, impacted that side of that bus, moved that bus 15 feet. It was a small bus, moved it 15 feet. Do you think that person was moving? Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Did that need to happen? Choices. 100 miles an hour, that was common. A lot of these I see are on interstates, and they happen mainly up in the Chicago metropolitan area up there, because the interstate is a place that they just feel that they need to show off and do their thing, weaving in and out of traffic, riding on the shoulder, going around traffic, all those kinds of things. But in the end, it didn't work out well for them. And many of these, they actually were doing 3 of those conditions, the causes before the crash. Did it have to happen? No. A couple of the motorcycles, there was one that he was trying to catch up to his buddies, and a car pulled out. And one of the things we were talking about earlier is seeing a motorcycle. A car has how many lights? 2, right? And they're spread apart. Can you judge that distance better than just one light? Absolutely. Okay, but if you got the one light, even if you see that light, but if you see a speck, if you possibly see a speck that's coming at you at 100, 120 miles an hour, how do you know it's going to be there if it's a 35 or 45 mile an hour speed limit? How would you know that motorcycle was going to be there before you made your turn? You wouldn't. You wouldn't. And unfortunately, I saw a couple of them in this, that the driver of the vehicle got a ticket. And I thought that was wrong. Because when that motorcycle impacted them, they estimated the speed at 100 or 120. There's no way that driver of that car could have ever known that motorcycle was going to be there. And in 2013, they killed the driver of that car that pulled out in front of them. And the motorcycle was embedded into that driver's door. And it was a horrible scene. It was a horrible scene. Did it have to happen? No. Choices. Choices. Age groups. Doesn't surprise me much on the right here. Put it all together, it shows it up even more. 20 to 30. Again, most of them were sport bikes, so that, I understand sport bikes. Like what they were talking about earlier. I had to go out, I went out and bought a V-Rod a couple years ago just because I wanted to see what it was like. My dad was a Pearl Harbor survivor, so I couldn't buy a Japanese motorcycle, so I bought a Harley V-Rod. And I sold it shortly after, realizing that I like to twist it too much, and that is not a bike for me. But they can get out of control real quick. Time of day. Again, there was no impairment, no BAC level. So when you see, bar time, even during the week, there was no impairment. They had no BAC, no drugs in their system. Just flat out high on the ride. They loved to twist it. They loved to twist it. Okay, motorcyclist fault. When I talk about motorcyclist fault, there's no impairment. Okay, there's no impairment. And so I didn't see it in 2012, but I saw it in 11 and 13. 8 crashes, 4 fatalities. And you can kind of see this. She's giving me the circle. So I got to start winding this up. So what happened? Improper passing, disregarding traffic signal or stop sign, passing farm equipment. Improper passing, they went into oncoming lane, head on. They ran stop lights, stop signs, just no apparent reason. They weren't paying attention or what was going on, but it was their fault. But it didn't. So there's the age groups. Medical condition, that went down in 2013. I was surprised about that. I got to kick this up a little bit. So contributing causes, heart-related, fatigue, dehydration. Dehydration, the person was 34 years old, perfect health, no drugs, no alcohol in their system at all. They finished negotiating a curve. They got about 100 yards down the road, and then they just drifted off the road, and they eventually impacted a tree. No movement, no brakes, no nothing, just veered off the road. I said, I got to know more. And we kept doing the research, and we found it, that they figured it was dehydration. They were dehydrated. They'd been out all day, and they were probably drinking soda. Soda doesn't hydrate you. Water, electrolytes, that hydrates you. You need to be constantly aware of your hydration when you're riding. And there's the age groups. Motorcycle versus animal. We don't have those in Illinois that are dominant, but I thought that'd get your attention. It went down dramatically in 2013. But again, these are fatals. They all had their M's except for 2013. One of them didn't. Tried to avoid an animal, riding in country, time of year, spring and fall, types of animals, cows, deer, raccoon. One couple was coming home, came up over a rise. There was a herd of cattle in the road. They impacted 3 of them. They didn't have a chance. What can you do to prevent that? I don't know. It's a choice that we got to think about. Age groups. I'm going to go. Equipment, T-clock. T-clock. Check your motorcycle every time before you go take a ride. It's your life. It could be your passenger's life. It depends on that. Worn front tire, loose front wheel, passenger fell off. That's another deal. Piece came loose and dragged on roadway, causing a loss of control. It sounded like a shovel head. A friend of mine used to ride, when we were riding, we'd always take turns following the other one and pick up the pieces because we both had shovel heads, pick up the pieces on the road that would fall off. We didn't do T-clock then. I'm going to tell you what, every time I ride a shovel head now, I'm going to do a T-clock. Passenger fell off. This goes back to taking care of your passenger. If a passenger wants to ride on your motorcycle and they're impaired in any way, not a good choice. In this instance, it wasn't. Passenger fell off. Their BAC was 0.256, and they had cocaine. What a combination. There had to be some clue that they're maybe not all there. I'm just saying that choices. Road construction, that's another one I thought was going to be up there. You can see it's not up there, but still there are loss of life. And when I was riding here, I'm going to tell you, when you see the sign that says loose gravel, they mean loose gravel. And the speed limit might be 75, and loose gravel is going to be really coming up real quick. And I had that happen twice on the way here. I'm going to remember when I see loose gravel on the way back, I'm going to slow down a lot more than I did. Because it's like, it's one of those things. Gravel's not my friend. But you can see uneven surface, tire debris, pothole. Illinois, they got potholes as big as me. But going back to this, we have control. Look in the mirror. Get your other brothers and sisters to look in the mirror. Let's do that. Let's make the difference before our government decides they're going to make the difference for us. Because, trust me, they're already trying to figure out ways. There's the crashes in review. I'm sorry, I got to go through this quick because I'm probably over. Riding impaired. But here's the big one right here. 167 motorcycle fatalities, 3 years due to impairment only. Now, I know your numbers are bigger in Texas as far as total crash deaths, fatalities, but we can only ride safely 3 or 4 months out of the year. You can ride 12. So there is a difference. I understand that. But there's 167 of my brothers and sisters that could be here today if impairment was not part of it. And this one, 141 motorcycle fatalities in 3 years, motorcyclist impairment only. That's no cager. That's us. Bring out the mirror. Ride smart is a choice. It is your choice. So what smart riding choice is in your riding future? Isn't that what we want? Right in our beautiful country? We have a beautiful country. And you do have a great state, and a beautiful state. I rode across the last couple days. I loved it. What a beautiful ride. That's what we want to do. We want to ride, and we want to come home. And there's my contact information. Feel free to contact me